I call it my Oliver Fowler story. And we were both about, 10 or 12 years old, playing together, and I always remember he had red hair, flaming red hair, and he lived with a Jewish couple, Nate and Clara Siegel, and they had a son, Georgie, who was about 8 when we were 12. But nobody ever questioned how come Oliver lived with that Jewish couple. We never knew whether he was adopted or left from a family death or something, and nobody ever asked. And Nate, the father, the uncle, he up and died, and Clara came originally from Chicago, so she decided to go back and be her family in Chicago. So she took Oliver and Georgie, and back they went. And that was the end of that. Oliver never heard any more about the people back here in the East. And it was years later, 10 or 12 years later, we were in the Army, and in the little pinpoint island in the Pacific called, I can't think of the name of it now. But anyway, we landed the Marines, and they went on fighting the Japanese, and they had done a pretty good job of driving the Japanese army ahead of us. So our job was a little more quiet because we had already landed them, so we had been eating dry packaged food that the Army supplied in little boxes wrapped in cellophane. And so they decided they would be in a field kitchen, little stove, kerosene stove, and cook us up some hot food, maybe a beef stew or something. So they got it going, and we all got in line, and Saipan was the island, and we brought our mess kit up, and they gave us some. Now you had to find a place to sit. There was no gallery or anything built, so you could go back to your vehicle and climb aboard, sit up in the vehicle, or just find a place on the ground and sit down and eat. And walking back toward my vehicle, I spotted a 50-gallon drum, oil drum, empty, laying there. So I turned it up on end and put my mess kit on top of that, made a table. I just had started to eat when along came this Polish boy from Chicago. His name was Eli Panik, and he was mad at everybody. He was mad at the war, mad at the Army, mad at the Marines, mad at the rainy weather. Boy, he was ugly. I said, Eli, be my guest, share my table. So he came over and put his mess kit on the barrel, and we stood there nose to nose eating. And finally he said, is today Friday? And I said, yeah. Boy, he said, if I was home today, I'd probably be eating lobster. And I said, oh, yeah, lobster. I said, lobster in Chicago. The Great Lakes are full of lobster. He says, no, I'm not kidding. He said, we have neighbors that have relatives back in the East, and they have a restaurant selling seafood, and about every month they send some out to this lady, and she calls us over and shares it with us. I said, boy, that's beautiful. He said, yeah, I can see the old redhead cracking that shell now. Oh, when he said that, my eyes went on fire. I figured, the old redhead cracking a red shell? Oh, I said, you must mean Oliver Fowler. How the hell did you know that? Have you been reading my mail? Well, when he moved from where we lived in the East, out there with Clara, they lived next door to this boy, Eli, and they went to school together, to high school. And here we are with about 30,000 troops on this little island, and by God, we meet.